Your nervous system, what it represents metaphysically is consciousness. So if you meditate, your nervous system's more stable, which means you're more in the now and not in the past or in the future, right? So then you have the ability to align with the solution and not just with the problem. And like I said, for me, it's preventive medicine too, because we live in a very different time, very different time. Social media, emails, text, WhatsApp, phone. I mean, the way the demands of our brain are so much higher now that even if you've never had any traumas, if you've never had any ancestral karma, if you've come from a golden lineage of, gods, you're still living in this new time where you're processing a lot of information and your brain is taking a big hit and your nervous system is taking a big hit.
Hello and welcome to the I Love Me Lab show. My name is Gail Buck and I'm an NLP Master Life Coach, meditation instructor, and a seeker of happiness. And each week, we're going to bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover additional ways of self-care, self-love, and becoming a healthier, happier you. So thanks for spending time with us today, and let's let the show begin. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to I Love Me Lab podcast. And I'm excited to be here again today with my dear friend, Veronica Barragan. And if you missed her before, Veronica was in episode 30. So I know you're going to love her today. And I invite you to go back and to listen to the first part of this conversation, because it's kind of going to be a continuance. So welcome back, my friend. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm really excited to dive a little bit deeper into this subject matter that I think a lot of people are really interested in. And not only that, but we have so many tools available to us to help us on the journey as well.
Yeah. And I by far have been my most popular guest. So thank you for taking time to be with us again. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Veronica yet, Veronica is a spiritual wellness counselor. She's also the founder of Sovereign Woman Movement and Academy, which I'd like you to touch on a little bit about that before we get going, and also Satori Wellness and Spirituality. She has a very, I'm searching for the right word. Just a beautiful membership site that offers, I dug through your membership site and it's like, there's so many tools and value in that membership site, as well as a podcast, which I'm going to be digging into as well. So, and you can find all of that at veronicabarraganiam.com. Yeah?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Okay. So dig in and tell us a little bit. What is the Sovereign Woman Movement, and also about the Satori Wellness, if you would?
Sure. So on my own personal journey, like we talked about a little bit last time we were together, of healing, of self-discovery, what developed was an actual method. And this method was really clear as to what it did and the results that it gave me. And so what it ended up being was my experience in spiritual psychotherapy and the work that I've been doing since 2008, I believe, at a really committed discipline level, and which has increased and really aligned me with the tools that I now use on an everyday basis, like Kundalini yoga and, of course, the miracle spiritual psychotherapy. So what ended up happening was that when I went on my own healing journey, I realized that there was a method there. There was something that could help women do the same thing that I did, which was, in essence, disrupt a lot of ancestral karmic patterns. Because as I was on my healing journey, my awareness grew. And I started to actually become aware of what is true, what they say, that we are running on 90 to 95% on a subconscious program, not even conscious throughout the day.
So let me just interject a little bit, because a lot of people don't know what your background is. And just a Reader's Digest, for those of you that know what Reader's Digest is, Reader's Digest version is, Veronica was a pretty high-powered businesswoman with a very successful real estate company, and running, in fact, that's where we met, and kind of running in this fast, pretty much male-dominated environment, a lot of male energy, and that included the type of networking we did and the cocktails after and during, that were going on during the time. And it's all about business, money, right? And you kind of crashed and burned and went into this seeking something more fulfilling.
Yeah. pretty much. And I think you could equate that to my nervous system crashing just because of it didn't have any inner practices to give it oxygen, to process emotions, to deal with my past and all of the things that I've been through in this lifetime. But also just like you said, the masculine energy of the industry that I was in, the competition, the staying out late, the partying, all that came with it, which not everyone chooses, but for me became a part of it because I was so involved in so much, not just in my local business, but like in national and even statewide. So, and I believe that even at that point, the real problem was that I was seeking fulfillment from something that would never give me fulfillment because the void was from within. And I was using tools like alcohol or getting approval, getting that next, role, that next leadership position that would fit my book of business of who I wanted people to believe that I was.
So I'm wondering how many listeners are nodding their heads yes. How many have experience where you're running and you're really living at a kind of like a surface level, right? Trying to fit in, trying to perhaps fill a void that you don't even know that you have. And just coming really from the surface and not really you're understanding why, even as you achieve more and more financial success, perhaps you're not achieving more and more happiness. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is the paradox that so many people find themselves in, which led to my nervous system breakdown, which I was already going through a very long spiritual awakening journey. It started back in 2008 when the first real estate market crash happened, because I was so identified with my material possessions and the money that when I had to go through short selling homes and going through a complete different lifestyle, I couldn't accept it. My ego said no. And so I went through a deep journey of self-realization, which led me to the tools that I found today, which what ultimately started happening was my awareness started to expand. And I started to realize that what I was going through was actually a pattern in my lineage, that these were actual patterns that my parents had gone through, my grandparents had gone through, and continued on and on and on. And so I started to dig more into that because I didn't think it was just a coincidence. I knew that I didn't really trust Western approach to medicine because I hadn't had a really good success rate with it. And because of that, I became more in tune with the holistic approach of what was really going on with me. And ask and you shall receive, because I started to read really amazing books, travel throughout the world, study the different spiritual traditions. And that's where the vision of creating this method came, to help other women disrupt these ancestral karmic patterns, because it's not why the addiction, it's why the pain. It's not why the void, but do you know who you are? And so all of those different uh, questions started to surface. And when I could no longer sustain the double life of, oh, everything's perfect in Veronica's life. She's married for a long time and has the perfect house. And look at her. She has money. She travels, when people didn't realize that I was like dying inside. Right. And so that's where the awareness started to grow. And I actually just recently read a really beautiful quote from the movie Eat, Pray, Love. Have you seen that movie?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so I saw that movie back in 2013 when my spiritual awakening and healing journey really like took a quantum speed forward. And I went on my Facebook and I saw some memories. And in 2013, I posted a quote from Liz, which she had said in that movie. That movie made a big impact in my life. And it was then when I started actually to travel as well in 2013.
And it is cycling again on Netflix, by the way. If anybody here hasn't seen it, yeah, take a look at it. It's beautiful on many levels.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go see it again, because I think this memory from Facebook came up for a reason. And the last part of the quote says that in this journey she went on, the hardest part was having the courage to have to face herself and to forgive herself. And I think that when we don't do the inner work, it's easy for us to take on the victim mentality of, I am like this because of what was done to me, versus when we start to do the inner work, and that's what I call meditation, of self-reflection, of self-awareness, you gain the chi and energy to process at a different level, at a different perception, what you believe has occurred. So you can detach yourself from the guilt, the shame, the anger, all of those things that, like we talked about last time, especially in our culture, in Mexico, not a lot of people get therapy or get help for the things that they've been through.
Yeah, you just have to get over it.
Exactly.
Or why are we even talking about this, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so that was a big part of the journey of my meditation practice. It was becoming aware of that, acknowledging the past, realizing that there's a lot of wisdom in it, and learning how to stabilize my nervous system and my brain to actually transform it from the pain and the structural changes that had gone through because of all the trauma that I had been through. And I think all of us have been through some form of trauma. Even the birth process is traumatic. Like
Well, and you're even talking about ancestral stuff, right? So maybe in this lifetime, maybe you've experienced trauma, you're not even aware of it. But whether you have or you haven't, it can be something, to your point about carrying through addictions or habits or choices that, your parents did, your grandparents, and understanding that, healing from that so you can change that. And the first step in changing it is actually recognizing that it exists. Yeah.
Correct. And that's where the awareness comes in. And, in this journey, I didn't know a lot about my ancestors. I think also growing up, being an immigrant from Mexico, it was kind of like programmed in me to not be proud of my color, to not be proud of my heritage, or to not even speak my language. And because of that, even those programs, whether they're done from ancestrally or parents or society, they really hold us back in unleashing our fullest potential and who we truly are. So it had a lot of awareness was on all the things that happened to me as a child, but then I also connected in my work with ancestors I didn't even know, I never met, great grandparents that I've had visions where they've come to me, and then I would go confirm the story with my abuelita who was still alive, and I would ask her, "Is this what happened with my grandfather, or what about my great grandfather?" And then she would tell me, "This is what happened to him." And then I would see how that pattern was playing out in my life and in my my parents' life. So this is real. Our ancestors, when they could not deal with their emotions or process the trauma, that's the energetic imprint that then gets passed down to us. And when we talked about last week is we all have these cells in us that turn on when we're not managing our stress. And so because I was living in such a high paced life, which I still am, I do all my website, I do all my sales funnels, I do calls every day for coaching, I have classes every week. I'm busy, I'm fulfilled, I'm aligned, very different. I'm not acting out of approval of anyone, my parents or society. The chi and energy comes from a place of guidance, of true knowing thyself, because I faced thyself, right? And so as I started on that journey, the courage and the confidence came back, and the healing went beyond forgiveness to acceptance. And not just for what I had been through, but everything and everyone who was involved in it. So it really has been a journey of humility and self-awareness. And that's what most of us are afraid of, the self-awareness.
So, if I recall correctly, I mean, you've been seeking and searching a long time and on this journey for a long time, but you took like a deep dive when you went to the Amazon for 21 days, was it? With,
Yes.
yeah, plant medicines and working with shaman. And after that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a lot of learning, but really not quite knowing how to ground the learning and what to do with that learning. And that's when you discovered the Kundalini yoga, which was for you something that rooted you, that anchored you, that kind of brought it all together.
Right.
Yes or no? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened. And the thing with the plant medicine work is that it literally can create a psychic shock if you're not prepared for that type of work, because and it's been proven scientifically what it does to the brain and the neurons of the brain as well, the plant medicine, which is very beneficial. But at the same time, it's like collapsing all the barriers of the subconscious mind where you hid all those fears, traumas, programs, and stuff like that, right? So when I came back, into the West, I could not integrate myself. I could not even like be around people. I just didn't want to be part of the world. And later, my teacher explained to me when I began my journey as a Kundalini yoga teacher that what was happening was everything in this world is energy and frequency. And what had happened to me was that all my emotions were pretty much like broken open like a wound, and they were moving through the system without any direction or channel. So the way I used to control and govern myself, I'm very strong in the mind. So that's how I used to push through life all the time. Well, the medicine brought those barriers down, which then opened me up to awareness of things that like I said, it's almost like I was given the key to the answers to life, but I still had to go and open the door every day. And you see this a lot. You see a lot of spiritual people are they're almost made fun of because they're not grounded, right? They're not honoring their incarnation. And that's what was happening to me. And I couldn't. It wasn't because it was a choice, because you know me, especially in the past, I'm very logical mind, very masculine. So it was very difficult for me. And that's when I surrendered and I asked for help. And we forget to ask the divinity for help. One of the books that I read that changed my life was Neil Donald Walsh. He wrote Conversations with God. Have you ever read that?
I have not.
Oh, you've got to check it out. And it's now translated in like a ton of languages throughout the world. But he was a homeless person he went homeless, and he, through that journey, started listening to downloads from God, which then he wrote a book about it. And now there's like 6 books on it. And I remember when I first read that book, I said, I want God to speak to me that way. I want to listen to God in that manner. And what's interesting is that my whole journey was leading up to that, because once I started to get humbled by life and knowing that I really can't and I'm not controlling it, that's when I started to strengthen that relationship and ask for help. And I asked God, I said, I need your help. There's chaos in my life. I came back from the jungle and I feel worse because I can't integrate there's too much that happened over there. I don't even know where to start. And our shaman told us, he said, the fun doesn't even start until you get back into your real life. Like, get ready. And sure enough, that was what was happening. And that's when I said, help me. And Kundalini yoga, a friend of mine said, you need to go try out Kundalini yoga. And that's when I went to try it. And it was like I was back in the jungle, connected to the medicine. And at the same time, what it was doing is that we have 2 triangles of energy that we're not taught about in school. It's the lower triangle and the upper triangle. Is a yogi, what we do with mudra, the way we position our hands, the way we breathe, the way we even position our eyes, what we're doing is we're awakening life force, white tantric Kundalini energy. That what it does is that it allows the flow to become natural and normal again. Most of the time it's not, because we're not managing stress. We are under trauma. Remember, our nervous system, the way it should function correctly is fight and flight, and parasympathetic, meaning you're resting, right? Because our brain becomes so damaged through trauma, there's this little area called the amygdala that stops working, and it stops it always thinks you're under that attack, even if you're not there. And so because of that, the nervous system doesn't function correctly. And now you're overwhelmed. And now what is happening is your emotions, which are energy and motion, are overwhelming and taking over your life. Basically, your mind, you're a slave to the mind. And that's why we don't have energy either, because your subconscious mind is eating up all of that energy. So when I went to this first class, what started to happen was I started to practice the breathing techniques, the meditations, and my energy field started to become more balanced. I started to feel more safe in my body. I started to feel more grounded, and I started to integrate what had happened to me in the jungle. That's when the real lessons came to me after my meditation practices, because I have a whole journal of the 4 ceremonies that I went through in the jungle, but it doesn't even compare to the awareness that I received afterwards. And it was because I had a tool that allowed me to work with my energy, which was the problem. The energy is always going to be the problem, which are your emotions. The language of our ancestors is of emotions. Yet we're not taught in school how to manage our emotions, how to process them. And we especially are not seen in our traumas. If we've been through abuse, if we've been through something traumatic, even a separation of a parents, that's really difficult for children. I remember that was so difficult when my husband and I were separated for a short time. And when we got back together, I mean, the healing we had to do, and there's so much that we go through that I saw in my visions and ceremony that I didn't realize had created so much pain in my life, or that my grandparents had gone through that were still residents in my life. So even though I don't feel like the healing journey is never over, what I do feel is incredibly safe, secure, and in faith in a time where most people are really struggling mentally, spiritually, and physically, especially.
So you were going to talk about the 3 most important must-dos to disrupt ancestral karma and to holistically heal. And you do this through meditation, or what are some things that you do?
So some of the things, like for example, the Sovereign Woman Academy, what it actually is comprised of is 8 different modules that women go through. The modules are comprised of one specific meditation, a Kundalini yoga meditation, one specific spiritual psychotherapy work that they practice for 7 days for 1 week. And what happens is we have a Monday night coaching call where I help them with whatever blockages they're working through. The reason that we do that is because what we do is we work through each of the emotions. And what I discovered in my practice as a Kundalini yoga teacher, and then also in training as a Kundalini yoga therapist, my teachers are doctors, they're Harvard scientists, they're physicians, they are incredibly talented in many facets as it relates to healing, right? So they taught me specific meditation work and specific practices that are directed specifically for mental health. And a lot of it also came from the downloads of what my ancestors were guiding me to put together as an actual method. So it's actually an 8-week method that you go through to work through the levels of emotions with specific meditation techniques and specific spiritual psychotherapy work to disrupt these patterns. Many of these women come and they don't know that they're on a pattern, or they don't know what the pattern is, but they know that they're struggling in life. And I actually get a lot of high achieving women just the way I was. It looks perfect on the outside, but I'm really struggling on the inside, right? And you would think it'd be easier because they're usually really disciplined and really committed to everything else in the world, but it's actually the hardest on them. Those that come to me with masculine energy, with the logical mind, it's really difficult for them to surrender and to actually just trust the process. And so a lot of it is also the mentorship, the accountability, because so much comes up in those 8 weeks that we have to then look at what those memories or our subconscious thoughts are really pointing to. And that's where the Monday night coaching actually helps them a lot too. So
what are some actual things that you could share with us here on must-dos to disrupt it?
So the meditation is a very important part of it. So there's 3 aspects of disrupting the pattern: the nervous system, the brain, and the spirit. So with specific meditations, which you can find so many free ones on my YouTube channel. Every week, in fact, on Wednesday, I do a live meditation to help you disrupt specific patterns like prosperity, blockages, mental health, things of that nature, toxic relationships, right? The meditation is key because the meditation changes the brain. It allows oxygen to be put in the brain so that new neurons can be functioning, and so that you have a better agility. You see, we live in the age of information. So you learn more in one day today than your ancestors learned in their entire lifetime 80 years ago. Just 80 years ago. That's not a long time.
It's all the information that's constantly dumped on us, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And when I see people with severe mental health issues like depression, suicide, addiction, the one thing I always ask is, tell me about your phone usage. And I can tell you that they are on TikTok for 8 to 10 hours. And what that is doing is that if they're already going through trauma, then they're using their phones and they don't have inner work. The brain, you could be 40 and that brain looks like a 90-year-old brain. Dry, completely. You wonder why people commit such heinous crimes. It's not behavioral. Their brains are completely deteriorated. There's even a documentary on that on Netflix from a football player, I believe, that so much damage to the brain. He killed people, did all this stuff. You would wonder, why would he do something like that? It's not behavioral. There's damage to the brain. So the meditation, what it does is that it brings agility to the brain so that you could thrive and be successful in this new age of Aquarius, which is the age of information. So no excuses. This is preventive medicine too, the meditation work, right? And 20 years ago or 50 years ago, you might not have not needed it. But now it's either do this or suffer because there's no magic pill out there. And so the brain, through meditation, starts to create agility, faster neurons, so you can process more information, you become more intelligent. You also stop identifying with the story that you keep telling yourself of the victimhood. And so that starts to work. Your nervous system is very important too. And that's done through meditation as well, to specific techniques. So meditation, what it does to the nervous system is it allows it to work naturally again, parasympathetic and sympathetic, which is basically, yes, fight and flight, but also rest and relax. Like in our meditation, the relaxation part is just as important as the meditation, because none of us give ourselves time to just 4 minutes of just relax from the tension. Stress is not bad. It means you're a badass and people need your services. But if you're not managing it correctly, you're going to suffer, right?
How do you feel like, because kids nowadays, small children, I mean, you see, and they're attached to their phone or their iPad or I mean, all that is great. And they're getting all this information. They're learning a lot. And certainly there's a lot of beautiful things associated with it. But I think there's also a lot of comparison about, I want to look like that person and I don't, so there's a judgment on yourself where you're looking to see who is looking at you. I mean, I wonder how important this would be for children to kind of learn to meditate as a daily practice, and how you would even teach them that.
That's such a great point you said, because a doctor, I think it was Dr. Gabor Mate who said this. I'm not 100% sure, but giving your daughter or child, especially under 7 years old, an iPad or a computer is like giving them vodka. What it does to the brain and what it does to their nervous system it's that impactful. And so I used to actually, when I first opened Satori Wellness and Spirituality, that was my membership community where I still teach 3 classes a week. And then I created the group coaching program because I wanted them to have further support on their journey. Because what happens is that they heal, they disrupt ancestral karmic patterns, but then they grow, they level up, they're opening businesses. So now they got to manage the stress, right? They're aligning with beautiful relationships. Now they got to manage the stress that comes with that. During that time, I actually had a children's class. I was teaching children. I had 2 different times for about 6 months. I was teaching a 5-year-old to 8-year-old class, and then I was teaching an 8-year-old to 12-year-old class. It was done virtually. We especially did it because of the pandemic. Children were not around each other, so we wanted something to have them come together. Children, to them, meditation is the most natural thing. I have a little niece who's only 2 nieces, 5 years old, the other one's 7. They see what mom does. They see what Tia Vedo does. They call me Tia Vedo. They will sit, you will see them. We'll be at having Thanksgiving dinner. I'll turn around and the little one is like, Satanama, meditating. Why? Because she sees her mom do it. I asked my teacher the same thing. I said, my youngest, when I first started meditating, he was only 13 at that point. And I told my teacher, how do I get him to meditate more? Because it's going to benefit him. He's like, don't force him. You do your work. He will follow. Kids do what their parents do. Sure enough, within a year, he started meditating. He asked me, Mom, what's this? What's Kundalini? I gave him based on his birthday, I can actually give you like a specific meditation to help you really align your energy. For 3 years, he hasn't stopped meditating, not even one day. It has made such an impact on him as a jujitsu. He does jujitsu. That's his life. And but the priority is the mind. He knows that his body will not be ready for what needs to happen on those matches, which he's won gold like the last 3 times he's done this. But it all starts in the mind. He is disciplined and committed. He has a daily practice. It's simple. It's only 18 minutes long, but it has been going on ever since day one. So yes, absolutely, children need this. And in the future, I'm gonna bring back the classes for the children next year, maybe. But I'm just really overwhelmed with everything that's happening with my current business as it is. But it is something that is absolutely needed. It's not that your kids shouldn't be allowed to touch the iPad. There should be boundaries and time, obviously, but
Sure.
they also need the preventive medicine because of this, because they're not using the books. They're using this.
Well, and you were talking about, touching the fingers and chanting, basically. So let's talk about that. I mean, what is the significance of touching and the chanting rather than just sitting there quietly?
So I'm glad that you asked about that one, because this meditation is known as the Curtin Kriya, and it's been studied by universities like UCLA. And actually, it's recommended by the Alzheimer's Association to be practiced for the reversal of memory loss, to literally heal yourself from Alzheimer's because of the groundbreaking studies that have been done on it. So Kundalini Yoga came in the 70s. So we've only been studying it scientifically since the late 90s. That's why we don't have so much data, right? But this particularly one, what science has now proven is that when you are, first of all, when you are touching the tip of your finger to each of the thumbs, or to the thumb, what is happening is there's specific areas of the brain that are actually turning on that never turn on because of the subconscious mind patterns that are actually happening. So when you start to turn on specific areas of the brain, neurons start to function. And then you have secretions that start to occur. These secretions are good secretions. This is why we wake the Kundalini energy. Instead of cortisol, which is the stress hormone that is released because we don't do the inner work, we're not managing our stress. When you do this, simply this, now you're secreting from the pineal gland, from the hypothalamus, hippocampus. In the East, it is known as the cave of Brahma. Dr. Joe Dispenza would describe this as the mystical experience. What that means is that you're turning on specific areas of the brain. The secretions are coming to this area of the brain that literally looks like a pool. It looks like a cave. And when those secretions gather in the pool, that is what can create instantaneous healing, instantaneous transformation. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, this is what he teaches, how to create the mystical experience. That's what this meditation does. Now, does it give me the mystical experience every single day? Absolutely not. In fact, most of the time I'm fighting with the subconscious patterns and things of that nature. But what we don't realize with this is that it's reversing also the memory loss. And it's doing this one thing that this is where Nobel Prize winners were like, I can't believe it. Because what it's doing is that it's increasing our enzymes, which are known as telomerase. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably not saying it right because I always use my Spanish way I look at it. But it's an actual enzyme that is think of it as like the end of a shoelace. You know, that hard part.
In fact, isn't that what they're measuring to see what our age is, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm 65, but and I've never had mine measured. I might be younger, I might be older, right? Depending on my,
Yes, because those actually burn off from stress. So if you are living in a very stressful life where you're addicted to the cortisol because of the chaos around you, then those start to shrink, right? Well, it was proven that with this meditation, after practicing it for only 40 days, these enzymes increase by 40%. Like,
wow.
No one has ever proved something like that. So you better believe that I got everyone doing that meditation. I do that meditation.
And it's a particular meditation, or is it simply meditating using your fingers?
There is a specific meditation. It's Curtin Kriya, but you will notice in Kundalini Yoga that we do this a lot with different variations. So like maybe another sound frequency that we're chanting, or another breath thing that we're using. Why? Because it'll give you a different effect. Maybe we're working on the liver, or we're working on the subconscious mind, or this is what yogis discovered. They sat in meditations. They discovered the science of energy. Basically, what do you do with your body, breath, and energy to ignite this healing energy from within? So yeah, that one, the Curtin Kriya, you can actually find it on my YouTube channel. I literally light up every time I talk about it, just because.
So spell it for me. Spell it for us.
It's Curtin. It's Kirtan, Kriya. So if you have anybody who's suffering with Alzheimer's, with dementia, this is the one, because it reverses it. It literally restores the memory. And for us, as it relates to ancestral karma, what that does for us is just the beauty and the agility of the brain to truly, like I said, have the chi to be able to accept what has happened, even if we don't know the whole story, but instead of not honor our ancestors, to learn to honor them so that we can disrupt that pattern of the shame and the guilt that comes with it as well.
So the chanting, tell me about the chanting. Why is that important?
So the chanting is a meditation. I would call it an active meditation. The chanting, what it does is that there's nothing more powerful for self-healing than your own voice. It's known as actual vocal toning. And so chanting is very different than saying affirmations, for example. Because in affirmation, you're using the English language. And to be honest, the English language is actually created to cover up a lot of the essence and the metaphysical and the truth of what the spiritual masters were trying to tell us, or really what the truth is, right? That's the way it is in this university of life. We're here to discover that, right? And so what happens is mantra is actual science of energy. These are sounds that are created not even through a language. It's known as Gurmukhi. And Gurmukhi is the science of sound. Yes, Gurmukhi. So there's like Sanskrit or other types of languages. This is not a language. This is an actual science of sound, meaning if you make these sounds, you're going to get this result. And so back in the day, when this was a secret and you had to be like a guru or a king to know this practice, it would take you maybe your lifetime to even know one mantra for you to be given that. Now we have access to all of them. So what happens is you basically use your own voice to turn on the Kundalini energy from within, the healing energy. So my daily practice is chanting for a specific sound frequency known as long ekkonkars. So I start with ek, and I take a deep breath from the lower root, which what that does is, first of all, it's like drinking coffee. It fills up my system with chi, with natural energy. That's when people are like, how do you wake up at 3:37 in the morning and are not tired? I'm like, if I don't do my
3:37, not 3:30, 3:37. Okay.
My husband's like, why not 3:33? It's a better number. I'm like, because I need my 4 minutes extra. Okay, it has to. So the reason I don't get tired throughout the day is because I'm actually fueling up with breath. That's what you're doing when you're chanting. You're fueling up with with your own chi, with your own energy. So that's why I don't get tired throughout the day. If I don't do my practice right, like if I'm sloppy with it, I come to my practice and I'm like tired. Like Thanksgiving, I was so stuffed, literally, and so tired. So in the morning, I was just like falling asleep, literally, right? So of course, throughout the day, I needed a nap because I was already groggy and all that stuff, right? So it fills you with energy. It fills you with natural chi. It turns on these brains that are known as chakras, which are energy centers. Remember, we're talking about the imbalance of them because our emotions take over. Well, with this particular, like this one, we turn them on by chanting, and I do envision each of my chakras turning on. Do I do it the 2.5 hours that I'm doing it? No, because my mind is scattered to different places. So the intention is always to bring myself back, right? And there are some days where I do an amazing job and I feel connected to the divine and I'm floating. But there are some days where I'm crying, angry, trying to process the million things that are happening. So that's why there's no wrong or right way of meditating or chanting. You do your best, you show up, you just prioritize it, and you know that you have an appointment whether or not. So then it starts to turn on the chakras, which balances, it processes emotions, it stabilizes the nervous system by allowing you to breathe in and out, relax it, make it active again. And then that energy, of course, impacts our brain. It starts to open up the thousand lotus petal. It allows you to secrete these really awesome chemicals. In Kundalini yoga, we always take our socks off because all the toxins actually come out through the feet. So even though people will say like chanting doesn't seem really active like yoga, like when I think of yoga, I'm bending my legs. Because I do my chanting every morning, my body follows and does what it wants or needs to. Like, for example, we did a meditation the other day where I had to hold my hands up for 31 minutes in a not easy position.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Why can I do that? I can do that because I'm strong in the mind, because I can sit for 2.5 hours and chant. I can be with myself in the morning and process all these uncomfortable feelings. That's why I can hold my hands up.
Don't you also find I am not a consistent meditator, and I'll go through periods in my life where I am, and then I'm not. I'm listening. I get caught up in the noise, and I step away and I get caught up in the noise. But what I do notice is that when I am, I see all these opportunities that are available to me that I'm able to take. And when I'm caught up in the noise, when I don't take the time to be still and to meditate, to chant or whatever, I miss those opportunities because I'm too stuck in the racing of my mind, right? And it almost seems like magic, like things appear, but I don't know that necessarily they appear more than right now I can see them. Maybe they're always there, but when you're following a meditation practice, now you're aware of them, so you're able to take advantage of them. Would you agree or not necessarily?
Oh yeah, 1,000%. And the reason that is because you're more conscious. So your nervous system, what it represents metaphysically is consciousness. So if you meditate, your nervous system's more stable, which means you're more in the now and not in the past or in the future, right? So then you have the ability to align with the solution and not just with the problem. And like I said, for me, it's preventive medicine too, because we live in a very different time. Social media, emails, text, WhatsApp, phone. I mean, the way the demands of our brain are so much higher now that even if you've never had any traumas, if you've never had any ancestral karma, if you've come from a golden lineage of, gods, you're still living in this new time where you're processing a lot of information and your brain is taking a big hit and your nervous system is taking a big hit.
So, Veronica, thank you. Thank you so much again for joining us. I love listening to you. I mean, this, I'm telling you with my whole heart, is the truth. And I just feel like I could spend hours learning from you and growing with you. And I'm going to ask you again. I hope that you'll come back. Would you come back again?
Oh, for sure. Thank you, Gail.
Yeah.
It's always an honor to chat with you. And thank you for making me feel so comfortable, and especially for putting out this podcast that is very much needed. I love all your guests, and I can't wait to continue to do the work, hear the work you do.
Thank you. And so if you want to reach out to Veronica, you can find her at Veronica Barragan, IM.com. And we will post that in the show notes. And thank you again for joining us. And we will see you next week. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to this conversation. If you enjoyed it and want more information on our guests and resources, please visit ilovemelab.com. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe and share with a friend. Hey, there's more great episodes to come. So until next time.